They said it was just a delivery. One trailer, one night, $10,000. All I had to do was follow 3 rules. Don't stop, don't roll down the windows, and if the engine dies, pray for sunrise. I took the job to save my dying sister. But somewhere in the fog-drenched mountains of Appalachia, I realized I wasn't delivering cargo. I was delivering death, and it knew my name. I stared at the hospital bill in my trembling hands, the fluorescent lights of my truck cab casting the numbers in stark relief. $85,000. That was the cost of survival these days. Not life, not hope, just one more round of chemo for my little sister. The paper felt heavier than it should have, like it was soaked with guilt. Rain tapped a nervous rhythm on the windshield, each droplet a countdown tick. Outside, Asheville's evening gloom pressed against the windows like a weight, and inside the cab, the silence was thick with dread. My phone buzzed. I didn't want to look, didn't want to hear the confirmation of what I already knew. But I did, and there was Emily's voice, faint, tired, but still trying to sound hopeful. "Jake," she said, her words coated in static and resignation, "they're stopping chemo unless we pay by Monday." I closed my eyes, pressing my forehead against the cold steering wheel, trying to breathe. I could see her then, pale against the white of hospital sheets, lips chapped, eyes too sunken for someone only 26. Her face haunted me, a face I'd promised Mom I'd protect, and I'd failed. "I'll figure something out," I said, but the words were hollow, a bitter lie in my mouth. 3 months behind on the mortgage, truck payments overdue, gas tank half full, and not a single haul worth the diesel. The recession had gutted independent truckers like me, left us scavenging for scraps after the big corporations took the meat. I used to take pride in being on the road, in the freedom of the highway. But now that freedom felt like a trap, an empty promise wrapped in debt. I scrolled through old texts and voicemails, praying for a lead. Nothing. No work, no hope. Until I saw one name I'd ignored before. Victor Crane. Crane Logistics. The kind of name you only heard in whispers at truck stops, between swigs of gas station coffee and nervous glances over shoulders. Stories about jobs that paid in cash and left you with more scars than answers. Trailers that didn't show up on manifests. Deliveries made in silence. Some drivers came back different. Others didn't come back at all. I never wanted to be that guy, the desperate one. But desperation changes everything. At 8:47 p.m., I found myself parked outside his office, engine idling, staring at a flickering neon sign. Crane Logistics. It buzzed like an insect about to die. My gut twisted, telling me to drive away, but then I remembered Emily's voice. Unless we pay by Monday, some choices aren't choices at all. I shut off the engine and stepped into the cold rain. The building looked like it belonged to another decade. Peeling paint, sagging porch, shadows stretching too long across broken pavement. I hesitated before opening the door. The air inside smelled of old smoke and something metallic like dried blood. The walls were lined with peeling wallpaper, water stains blooming in chaotic shapes like continents I'd never visit. A single desk lamp burned low, casting shadows that danced with the hum of the bulb. Victor Crane sat behind a desk that looked like it hadn't been cleaned in years. His face was half in shadow. He wore long sleeves, buttoned tightly at the cuffs, despite the stuffy heat of the room. He didn't rise to greet me. "Turner," he said, "you're late." I lied without hesitation. "Traffic." The chair across from him creaked under my weight, and I noticed how his eyes never quite met mine. He was always watching, but never directly. The kind of man who had seen things and never stopped seeing them. "You need money," he said. "I need a driver who won't ask questions." I nodded slowly, heart pounding. My eyes drifted to the wall behind him. An upside-down crucifix hung crooked, half hidden in shadow. Maybe it was just some edgy decor, but something about it chilled me to the bone. "What's the job?" I asked. "One sealed trailer. Asheville to Knoxville. One night. 10,000 in cash." That stopped me cold. 10 grand? Vic's smile was thin, toothless. "Because it's not a normal load. You're desperate. Desperate men don't talk." He slid a piece of paper across the desk. A single-page contract with only 3 rules, underlined in red. Rule 1. No stops. Not for hitchhikers, breakdowns, or piss breaks. Rule 2. Keep windows up. If you hear tapping, don't look. Rule 3. If the engine dies, pray for sunrise. I read the rules twice, then a third time. I felt my hand hesitate over the paper. "What's in the trailer?" I asked. 10,000 says you don't need to know." Emily's face rose again behind my eyes. I thought about the bruises under her eyes, the way her body looked like it was folding in on itself. I picked up the pen and signed. Vic counted out a stack of hundreds and slid them across the desk. "A down payment," he said. "The rest when you deliver. Trailer's out back, keys are in it." As I stepped back into the rain, the night felt heavier, as though it had been waiting for me to make that deal. I looked toward the trailer, gleaming white under the security lights. No markings, no license numbers, just a blank shell. And I had just agreed to carry it through the darkest part of the mountains. God help me. The rain had stopped, but the air hadn't cleared. Instead, it settled around me like a damp wool blanket, heavy, clinging, saturated with the stink of old asphalt, wet steel, and something else. Something I couldn't name. The trailer waited for me in the back lot of Crane Logistics, its white surface almost too clean under the security floodlights. It gleamed like bone. No company logo, no serial number, no dot tag. Just smooth, anonymous panels and a thick, industrial-grade lock on the back. Even from a distance, it looked wrong, like it was trying too hard to be normal. I circled it out, of habit, performing my pre-trip inspection. Tires intact, axle connection secure, lights functioning. It wasn't for safety. I doubted anything about this job was safe, but the motions gave me something to do with my hands. When I reached the rear doors, I paused. The lock wasn't just secure, it was digital. Military grade by the looks of it. No keypad, no obvious entry point. Whatever was inside, Vic didn't want anyone, including me, getting a peek. As I crouched to check the undercarriage, I heard the soft shuffle of footsteps behind me. I turned quickly, hand instinctively going for the tire iron behind my driver's seat. A man stepped out of the shadows near the dumpsters, tall, gaunt, and wrapped in clothes 2 sizes too big. His beard was a tangle of steel wool, and his eyes gleamed with a strange clarity under the lamplight. "You the new driver?" he asked. His voice was clear, oddly smooth for someone who looked like he'd been chewing gravel for breakfast. I said nothing, just stood slowly. He leaned in, close enough that I could smell him, but it wasn't body odor I expected. It was soil, damp, freshly turned earth like a grave dug before rain. He pointed a crooked finger at the trailer. "They're in the coffins, boy," he whispered. "I was driving their beds." My skin went cold. I didn't even fully register what he'd said before Vic appeared out of nowhere, shoving the man back with more force than I thought his wiry frame could generate. Crazy old coot, Vic. Spat, though there was a sharp edge to his voice, not anger, fear. He turned to me, expression brittle. "Ignore him, he's not part of this. Get moving, Turner, clock's ticking." The homeless man laughed then, a horrible noise like shattered glass falling down a metal chute. "Tell him about Lilith," he called out. "Tell him what happens." In Blood Hollow, Vic went pale, I mean bloodless. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my jacket with bruising pressure. "Take Route 66, he said quickly. "Through the mountains, Blood Hollow. It's the fastest way. Don't stop. Don't look back." I nodded dumbly and climbed into the cab. the envelope of bills stuffed into my breast pocket like a brick of ice. Through the side mirror, I watched Vic shove the man again, shouting something I couldn't make out. The old man locked eyes with me as I pulled away. He dragged one finger across his throat, slow and deliberate. I shivered, but it wasn't the cold. The GPS lit up and plotted the route. Route 66 through the Appalachian backroads, a path locals had dubbed Blood Hollow. 4 hours to Knoxville. 4 hours of darkness through some of the most isolated terrain in the region. No towns, no rest stops, no witnesses. As I merged onto the empty highway, the city lights fell behind me like a curtain closing. What lay ahead was ink-black night, wrapped in fog that thickened with every passing mile. The road felt like a ribbon being unraveled by some unseen hand. I kept the radio off and the windows rolled up, the hum of the tires and the occasional wail of wind against the trailer, my only companions. 20 minutes in, I passed the first mile marker, then the second. By the fourth, I realized I was gripping the wheel too tightly. My knuckles were white and my shoulders ached from the tension. That's when I noticed the rules again. I'd memorized them, but now they began to feel less like guidelines and more like a countdown. Rule 1. No stops. Not for hitchhikers, breakdowns, or piss breaks. Easy to scoff at when you're sitting in an office. Harder when your bladder screams and your headlights catch a figure standing alone on the shoulder. I saw her at mile marker 22. She stood completely still under a rusted sign reading Knoxville 100 miles. A woman in a wedding dress, once. White but now stained a deep unnatural red down the bodice. Her arm extended, fingers pale and outstretched in a hitchhiker's gesture. I eased off the gas instinctively. Then I remembered. No stops. I pressed the pedal again. Hard as I passed her, I made the mistake of looking into the side mirror. Her face twisted, mouth gaping far too wide, teeth jagged and wrong. She mouthed something to me, "You'll stop." My heart slammed against my ribs. I couldn't tell if it was anger, fear, or both. I wiped the sweat from my palms onto my jeans and pushed harder. Fog thickened, but I didn't dare slow down. Just a story, I told myself, just nerves. But my mind kept circling back. The old man's voice echoed, "They're in the coffins. You're driving their beds." And now I knew the road had a name, Blood Hollow, and rules weren't made to be broken. They were made to keep something out. Or maybe something in. The road ahead unfurled like a ribbon cut from the night itself, twisting and curling through dense Appalachian woodland. Each turn revealed more of the same. Thick fog, shadow-soaked trees, and silence so complete it pressed against the windows like a second skin. The only sound inside the cab was the low, rhythmic growl of the engine and the occasional creak of the trailer shifting behind me. I kept my eyes forward, hands tight on the wheel, and tried not to think about the woman in the wedding dress, but I couldn't shake her. The way her eyes caught the red of my tail lights, glowing like an animal's. The way her mouth didn't. Plead but promised. "You'll stop." Rule 1 rang like a war drum in my head. No stops. Not for hitchhikers, breakdowns, or piss breaks. I didn't know what was in that trailer, but whatever it was, it didn't want me to stop, and something out here desperately wanted me to. That was the tension sitting in my chest like a rock. Not just the cargo I didn't understand, not just the payment I didn't trust, but the road itself. This wasn't a route anymore. It was a test of obedience, of endurance, of fear. Outside, the fog began to crawl higher, thickening until I could barely see past the front bumper. I slowed to a crawl, afraid of careening off into a ravine. My GPS was still lit, but even it had begun to flicker in and out, the display glitching like an old VCR tape, jerking between frames, showing phantom roads that disappeared as quickly as they came. Mile 30, mile 31. The markers passed slowly, each one a notch carved into my nerves. Then the radio snapped on. I hadn't touched it. My hand wasn't even near the dial, but the old CB crackled to life, the static sharp and sudden in the thick silence. Through the noise, I heard something, faint like a voice on the edge of a nightmare, just a whisper but unmistakably human. And then, clearer, turn back. I reached for the switch, hand shaking, and killed the sound, but that whisper didn't leave me. It lingered, burned into my brain like an afterimage. A second later, a different voice crackled through, smoother, more confident. Ignore that. Turner. I froze. I hadn't said my name. No one had. But I recognized the voice, Victor Crane. Kids hacking frequencies, he continued, tone too calm to be reassuring. Just keep driving. You're making good time. I stared at the radio. How the hell was he on this channel? CBs don't work like that. Not unless he was tracking me, listening in somehow. The chill that crept down my spine wasn't from the fog anymore. What's in the trailer, Vic? I asked aloud. What the hell am I pulling through this place? No. Answer. Just a sharp click like a lock turning, the kind of click that told me I was on my own now. Mile 38. The trailer shifted behind me with a soft thump, like something adjusting position. I tightened my grip on the wheel. My eyes flicked to the side mirror, just fog and darkness. No sign of movement. But that didn't mean nothing had moved. The wind picked up then, a sudden gust that blew across the road and rocked the cab slightly. But the trees didn't move. Not a single branch swayed. The wind was only inside my ears. Mile 42. The truck began climbing again, winding higher into the mountains. The road narrowed. Guardrails, when they existed, were rusted, bent, or missing entirely. One wrong move, and I'd go tumbling down into a gorge no one ever found the bottom of. I kept one hand on the wheel and the other near the gear stick, eyes scanning every shadow. That's when I heard it tap, 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 soft, rhythmic. From the passenger window, I didn't look. I knew the rule. Rule 2, keep windows up. If you hear tapping, don't look. The tapping continued. It wasn't frantic. It was patient, deliberate, like someone waiting politely to be let in. I stared ahead, refusing to move my gaze even a fraction. My peripheral vision was a war zone of imagined horrors. I forced myself to breathe evenly. Not real, I whispered. Just the fog, just the road, just fatigue. Then the tapping grew louder. Bang, 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 like fists on glass. My nerves snapped. I turned my head. Just a glance, just a sliver of a second. A teenage boy stood outside the cab window, somehow keeping pace with the truck despite the incline. He wore a high school letterman jacket, soaked with mud and something darker. His mouth moved. He was shouting, pleading, help! They're chasing me. His face was twisted in terror, eyes wide, glowing faintly in the dark, glowing like embers behind glass. Then he slammed his palm against the glass again. I jerked the wheel slightly, more from instinct than reason, and nearly veered into a ditch. I forced my eyes back to the road. When I looked again, he was gone. Just mist. Just silence. Mile 45, I swallowed dry air and checked the mirror. Nothing. I tried to convince myself it had been a trick of the fog, a hallucination. But then why did my passenger side window bear the faint, smeared outline of a hand? I kept driving. The truck pulled around a bend, and ahead I saw the glow of an old gas station rising out of the mist like a hallucination. The sign above it read, Redfield Stop, half the bulbs missing. No lights on inside, no cars at the pumps. The place looked abandoned, deserted for decades. But my GPS insisted it was an active service point. I shouldn't have stopped. Every instinct screamed not to, but my hands ached. My head pounded. My bladder was on fire and the dread in my gut needed air. Just a minute, I told myself, just 1 minute to breathe. I pulled in, killed the engine. Rule 3 echoed. If the engine dies, pray for sunrise. A mistake. But it was already too late. The air outside was wrong. Too still. No crickets. No wind. Just a silence that ate sound. I stepped out, legs stiff, flashlight in hand. The smell hit me instantly. Not gas or oil, but dirt. Rich, loamy, grave-like. I circled the trailer, flashlight catching on the digital lock. It glowed green. Unlocked. My breath caught. Had it always been unlocked, or had something opened it while I was driving? Something was very, very wrong, and I was only halfway through Blood Hollow. I stared at the green glow of the digital lock like it was a countdown timer on a bomb. It hadn't been lit when I hooked up the trailer. I was sure of that. The lock had been dormant, just a smooth metallic face. Now it pulsed, a soft, eerie light in the fog, as if beckoning. Unlocked, a single word that carried 1,000 implications. I swallowed hard and backed away, my boots crunching gravel as I glanced around the lot. The Redfield stop was dead quiet, every window boarded from the inside, every crack sealed like someone had tried to trap something in, rather than keep thieves out. The pumps were ancient relics, rusting metal, mechanical dials, hoses chewed through by time. No working station would still have these, and yet it was on the GPS, it was active. This place wasn't here by mistake. Nothing about this route had been. I circled to the back of the trailer, hand clenched tightly around the flashlight, heart beating too fast. The weight of the night pressed down like a thumb on the back of my skull. I could still hear the echo of the tapping, the boy's face. The voice on the radio. Vic's warning, don't stop, don't look, don't ask, but I had stopped, I had looked, and now the trailer was open. I could have walked away, climbed back into the cab, turned the key, driven off. But I didn't. Something, stronger than fear, pulled at me. Curiosity, dread, a bone-deep certainty that I needed to know what I was transporting. Because if I didn't, whatever was inside would win. And I didn't come this far to lose control. I stepped onto the metal ramp and grasped the door handle. Cold. Too cold. My fingers stuck to it like metal in a freezer. I hesitated for just a second before pulling. The latch clicked with unnatural ease and the door creaked open an inch, then two. Fog spilled inward, slithering along the floor like it was alive. I squeezed inside. The air changed instantly. It was colder, denser. Every breath was a struggle. My flashlight's beam cut a narrow cone through the gloom, but even that seemed absorbed by the dark wood around me. There were 6 long crates, each nearly 7 feet in length, arranged in 2 rows of 3. The craftsmanship was meticulous. Dark oak, no nails, no hinges. They weren't crude boxes, they were coffins, finely made, reverent, as if built not to store, but to preserve. A brass plaque on the first one caught the light. Eliza Thorne, 1897, 1923, blinked. That couldn't be right. 100 years ago, I moved to the next. Samuel Wicker, 1878, 1923, then the third, the fourth, all names, all from the same year. 1923. I stepped backward, heart hammering, nearly tripping over something in the dark. My flashlight fell on a small table near the far end of the trailer, one I hadn't noticed before. On it lay a leather-bound ledger, cracked and yellowed with age. It was open, as if waiting for someone to read it. I approached slowly, the soles of my boots whispering against the metal floor. The pages were filled with names, dozens of them, neatly written in ink the color of dried blood, each with a year, sometimes 2. I recognized some, names I'd seen in missing persons reports, news articles, truckers who vanished on mountain roads, hikers never found. Some names had been crossed out. Halfway down the most recent page, I saw it. Victor Crane, 2023. His name was not crossed out. Beneath it, a blank space, a fresh line waiting for mine. My hands trembled. The flashlight jittered. A sudden wave of nausea rolled through me as I realized I was part of a pattern. Not just a contractor, not even just a pawn. A placeholder in a chain that stretched back a century. The silence was broken by the shrill ring of my phone. I fumbled it from my pocket, hands numb. Caller, unknowny, answered without thinking. Enjoying. The tour, Turner? Vic's voice slithered through the speaker like oil. What the hell is this? I barked, stepping back from the ledger. Who are these people? What am I driving? Not who, he said coldly. What? You bastard. Deliver the coffins, he interrupted, or they'll take Emily. My blood froze. He said her name. How do you know my sister? I hissed. The same way I know she's in room 302 at Asheville Memorial, Vic replied calmly. Same way I know she's got one treatment left. And it won't happen unless you finish the job. My stomach turned. You're bluffing. A pause, then. You think I wanted this, Turner? You think I chose this? A vision crashed into my mind like a freight train. Not a memory, but it felt like one. A hospital room. A little girl, 8, maybe 9, pale, sick, hooked up to tubes. A man standing over her, Vic. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing arms covered in bite marks, some fresh, some scarred. He injected something black into her IV. Her name bracelet read, Leia Crane. I stumbled backward, gasping. What was that? I shouted. What did you show me? Vic's voice returned, hollow. They showed you. They want you to understand why I serve. Who are they? You know who. You've seen them. I dropped the phone. Because I had. The bride on the road. The boy with the burning eyes. And now, something was shifting inside the coffins. I stepped closer to the nearest one. A small circular vent near the top. Air holes. I leaned in. The soil inside was moving. Not because of the truck's motion, not because of the wind. It rippled, like something beneath it was rising. They're waking up, Vic's voice echoed from the fallen phone. I backed away in terror, heart thudding so hard it shook my vision. I slammed the trailer door shut, fingers slipping on the handle, and bolted back to the truck, my keys already clenched in my fist. The moment I slammed the door behind me, something inside the trailer scraped across the interior wall, a long dragging noise, like claws on metal. I stabbed the key into the ignition. The engine coughed, once, twice, then roared to life. I didn't wait. I threw the truck into gear and peeled out of the Redfield stop, tires spitting gravel behind me. My breath came in panicked bursts, and my hands trembled on the wheel. The rules hadn't just been for safety. They'd been warnings, chains. And I had broken every single one, and now whatever was inside the trailer was awake. The wheels of the Freightliner screamed as I surged back onto the road, the Redfield stop vanishing into the mist behind me. My chest heaved, breath ragged, and my fingers clung to the wheel like it was the only anchor in a world spinning out of control. The engine's growl filled the cab, but even that comforting rumble felt drowned out by the memory of what I'd just seen. The coffins, the ledger, the dates, and the soil that moved. They were waking up. I wasn't supposed to see them. I wasn't supposed to know. But I did, and now I was part of it. The GPS had recovered its signal, the route still etched across the screen like a scar on the mountains. Route 66 twisted deeper through Blood Hollow, and the trees loomed closer now, like they were bending forward to listen. To every bump, every sway of the trailer behind me made my stomach churn. Were they moving, shifting, trying to get out? The CB radio crackled again, static first, then a click, then the voice I was beginning to despise. "Turner," Vic said, his tone flat. "You opened it." "Damn right I did," I snapped. "What the hell is this, Vic? Who are those people?" There was a pause. "Not people," he said. "Not anymore. Don't play games with me. I saw the ledger. I saw your name in it." "They keep records," he replied. "They always have. Every driver, every offering, every betrayal." "You were going to send me in blind," I growled. "You knew I'd open that door. You knew I'd see them." "No," he said, and for the first time, there was a tremor in his voice. "I hoped you wouldn't." Another pause. "I was like you once," he continued. "Desperate, broke. My daughter, Laya, she was dying of leukemia. I begged every doctor in Asheville. No one could save her. No one. But them." I didn't speak. I just listened. Rage simmered beneath the surface, but something else too. Dread. "I was on this road," Vic said. "Same route, same trailer, different rules. Back then, there was only one. Deliver before dawn. I made it, but barely. And when I did, they kept their word. Laya woke up, the cancer was gone. But the cost, Turner, the cost never ends. You became their servant. I became their broker," he admitted. "They can't move freely across sacred ground. There are thresholds, consecrated places, mountain ley lines that weaken them. So they need transport, and in return, they offer miracles." "Monsters offering miracles," I said, voice low. "You'd be surprised how many take the deal," he muttered. "You're not the first, you won't be the last. You're just the latest in a long line of desperate men." I thought of the ledger again, the blood-colored ink, the names crossed out, his still open, mine waiting. "And the coffins?" I asked. "They sleep in soil from their original graves," Vic explained. "Old soil, ancestral. Without it, they can't feed, can't regenerate. It's why they have to be delivered by sunrise to a place where more soil awaits. You break the rules, you risk waking them early. That soil, Turner, it's more than dirt. It's life support. It's the only thing keeping them dormant." I remembered the way it writhed beneath my touch like something alive. I shivered. "And the ledger?" I pressed. "Why keep names? Why track everything?" "Because they want witnesses," Vic said, his voice hollow. "They want memory, they want obedience, but not ignorance. They reward curiosity, punish it too. But above all, they want you to understand what you've become part of." I didn't realize I had slowed until the GPS chirped. Rerouting. I cursed and accelerated again, trying to drown out the thoughts clawing at the edges of my mind. But they wouldn't go away. They're not human, they're not alive, but they remember everything. "Who is Lilith?" I asked suddenly. Vic went quiet. Then, in a near whisper, he said, "She's the first." "First what?" "The first of them. The oldest. She's not a vampire, not exactly. She's hunger. Hunger that never ends. She doesn't drink blood. She drinks desperation. Fear. Bargains." My stomach turned again. "She leads them? She created them." The line crackled again and then fell silent. Vic was gone. Whether he cut the call or was silenced, I didn't know. I was alone again, and the road had grown darker. The fog had thickened to the point where I couldn't see past 10 feet, but I kept driving because what else could I do? Then the whispers returned, not from the CB, from everywhere. They rose softly at first, like wind in a cave, but then I realized they weren't random. They were voices, and they weren't outside the truck. They were inside, in the vents, in the wiring, in the frame itself. I turned off everything I could, radio, fan, lights in the dash, but the whispers didn't fade. If anything, they grew louder, a chorus of hunger, a tidal wave of grief, rage, pleading. "Let us feed. Deliver us. Emily." That name hit me like a punch to the throat. I slammed on the brakes. The truck jerked forward and skidded slightly, the trailer groaning behind me. I sat there, frozen, heart pounding in my ears. They knew her name. They weren't bluffing. I reached for my phone with shaking fingers. No signal. Of course. I was in the deepest part of the hollow now, where even light felt like a stranger. For a moment I stared at my reflection in the window, pale, drawn, eyes hollowed out by fear and fatigue. I looked like a man losing his soul. I had to know more. I had to see it again. I climbed into the back of the cab, opened the rear panel to the trailer, and slipped inside with a flashlight. They hadn't moved. Not yet, but the soil had. It was heaving, like breath. I stepped forward past Eliza's coffin toward the table where the ledger sat. I needed to see the truth again. I needed to see if my name had been added. It had Jacob Turner, 2023, and below it. The ink was still wet, a faint scratch of penmanship beneath it. Emily Turner, 2023. I recoiled as if struck. My throat closed up. They weren't threatening her life anymore, they were claiming it. Unless I delivered them, she was already gone. My legs buckled, and I dropped to one knee, staring at the cursed book like it might burn a hole through me. The flashlight flickered. Something inside one of the coffins let out a sound, not a voice, not a growl, but a shuddering, rustling movement that ended in a long sigh, like a corpse exhaling its last breath twice. I stumbled out of the trailer, slammed the door shut, and locked it again, praying the green glow would turn red. It didn't. Back in the cab, I sat for a long moment, hands shaking. The road stretched ahead into the endless black. The rules had already been broken. The deal was collapsing. Hand time was running out, but now I knew. They weren't just passengers, they were executioners. And if I didn't finish the route, the blade would fall on Emily. And if I did, it would fall on someone else. That was the real rule no one had written. Someone always pays. The road trembled beneath my wheels like it was protesting the weight I carried. Every mile I put between myself and the Redfield stop should have brought me relief. It didn't. The cab felt colder than it had any right to be, even with the heater on full blast. My breath clouded in the air. Sweat beaded at my temples. I was burning and freezing all at once. My thoughts were no better, circling like vultures around that ledger, that list of names, mine, Emily's, written in that same cursed ink that might as well have been blood. They had no right to her. They had no right to me. But the trailer behind me didn't care about rights. It creaked and shifted, a low moan echoing from within as the road curved sharply around a ridge. I glanced in the mirror and saw nothing but mist and shadow. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that eyes watched me from the blackened windows of those coffins. I tried to distract myself. I focused on the road signs. Knoxville, 68 miles. I could make it if I didn't stop again. If the truck held, if the fuel line didn't rupture, if the things behind me didn't tear their way out first. Too many ifs, I thought grimly. Flipped on the CB radio again. Not because I wanted to hear Vic's voice, but because the silence had grown unbearable. My ears rang with it, the static charge of tension crawling up my spine. The radio sputtered, static at first, then a garbled chorus of whispers that had returned stronger than before. Closer. We smell the sun. He's cracking. I slapped it off, but the voices didn't die. They lingered in the vents in the wheel well, in the seams of the truck like a gas leak waiting for a spark. I could feel them now, awake. Something had shifted since I read the ledger. Since I saw Emily's name, they had claimed her. That wasn't a threat. It was a transaction in progress. The engine began to sputter. Just once. A cough, like a sick dog trying to bark. Then again. My chest locked. I pressed the gas harder, and the truck lurched forward, buying me another few hundred feet. I prayed to every god I didn't believe in that the hasty repair I made earlier would hold. My eyes flicked to the fuel gauge, just under half a tank, still leaking, still bleeding, say. New noise rose from the trailer, not shifting wood, Not metal on metal. It was breathing, a low collective inhale like 6 lungs drawing their first air in a century. I slammed the dashboard with my fist. No, not now, not yet. But the sound grew louder, and then, one by one, I heard it, the creak of coffin lids under strain, like hinges bending under pressure, like flesh pressing from within. They were waking. Whether it was the broken rules or the sheer nearness of dawn, I didn't know, but I could feel the balance tipping. I wasn't delivering a sealed cargo anymore. I was hauling the undead, barely contained, and growing stronger with every mile. I needed a plan, something more than just hope and a gas pedal. A thought formed, insane, but the only one I had. The soil. Vic had said they needed it to regenerate, to survive. I'd seen what happened when it spilled, how they weakened, how Eliza screamed when the dirt had been disturbed. Without it, they were vulnerable. I took the next bend too fast, tires shrieking on the asphalt. The trailer swung wide, throwing its weight like a drunkard. I didn't care. I needed to find a place to stop, a moment to act, to fight back. There, a turnout, small, gravel, meant for emergencies or tired truckers. I veered into it, killing the headlights as I parked. I climbed out into the cold air, flashlight in one hand, crowbar in the other. My boots hit the gravel with heavy, muffled thuds. I stalked toward the trailer, every step like walking toward the mouth of something ancient and hungry. The green light on the lock still glowed, still open. I pulled the doors wide. The sight inside froze my blood. 3 of the 6 coffins now lay open, lids peeled back like the husks of rotten fruit. The soil inside them undulated, alive with movement. Limbs twitched beneath the surface, fingers, ribs. Faces that had not breathed in 100 years now turned in slow motion beneath the dirt like sleepers caught in nightmares. I stepped forward and gritted my teeth. "Eliza," I muttered. "Let's see how you like waking up. Hungry." I jammed the crowbar into the nearest box and pried loose a slab of the coffin's ornate side panel. Soil spilled out like thick sand, black and writhing, steaming in the cold air. A shriek exploded from the box, high-pitched, inhuman. A figure sat up from within, her wedding dress clinging to parchment skin, her face gaunt and twisted with rage. I didn't stop. I moved to the next coffin, slashing through the side like a man possessed. More dirt spilled. Another howl filled the night. Behind me, something moved, a blur leaping from one of the open boxes. A hand grazed my back, claws like icicles slicing my coat. I turned, flashlight beam catching on the face of Samuel Wicker, or what was left of him. His eyes were pits of milky white, his mouth, unhinged with black teeth, gums pulsing like wet paper. He rushed me faster than I thought possible. I swung the crowbar and caught him in the jaw, bone cracked. He didn't stop. "Stay down," I roared, kicking him back into the coffin, slamming the lid shut. I grabbed one of the sacks of soil, still intact, and hurled it into the woods. Another and another. With each loss, the vampires inside shrieked louder, weaker. Their power faded with every handful of stolen earth. Their screams were no longer rage, they were fear. Behind me, I heard a new voice, velvet and venom. "Turner," Lilith said, stepping from the shadows. My blood turned to ice. She was beautiful even now, but it was the kind of beauty you only saw once, before it killed you. Her skin shimmered like silver under the moonlight, but her eyes were burning coals. "You broke the contract," she said softly. "You claimed my sister," I growled. "I offered you life. You chose war. You offered me slavery." I spat. She smiled. "And now you'll die in darkness." She raised a hand, and the remaining vampires began to climb from their coffins. Twisted, ruined bodies powered by rage and desperation. I had seconds, maybe less. I grabbed the last sack of soil, the largest one, and ripped it open. The dirt writhed like a nest of eels. I plunged the crowbar into it and stirred. Lilith shrieked, her mask cracking. The others howled. The air erupted with fury and motion. Shadows lunged, claws swiped. I leapt backward off the trailer ramp, rolling hard down a slope behind the turnout. I landed on my side, crowbar still in hand, breath knocked from my chest. Above, chaos, Lilith screaming commands, Eliza wailing, Samuel writhing. Their earth was gone, their sanctuary undone. They were alive, but weak, and sunrise was coming. I pushed myself to my feet, body aching, heart pounding. This wasn't over, but the odds had shifted. I could fight. I could win. I just had to survive until dawn. The trees swallowed me whole as I fled into the forest, branches clawing at my arms and face, like skeletal fingers trying to drag me back. Behind me, the trailer still echoed with chaos, snarls, shrieks, the metallic clang of coffins tipping, and Lilith's voice cutting through it all like a blade. I didn't look back. I didn't have to. They were awake now, enraged and hungry, and they had chosen me as their first course. The woods were steep and slick, the soil wet with mist and the rot of fallen leaves. Every step was a risk. My boots skidded over slick roots and loose stones, and more than once I went down hard on my knees, palms scraping open on bark and gravel. But pain didn't matter, only distance, only speed. I could hear them, moving, faster than any animal had a right to, not crashing through the forest, but gliding, darting, the way nightmares moved in dreams, silently and far too close. The crowbar was still in my hand, though it felt heavier with each step, like the weight of it was dragging me back into their grasp. I wanted to throw it away, to move lighter, but it was the only weapon I had, and I'd already seen how effective it could be. So I held on, even as blood from my scraped knuckles slicked the handle. Somewhere up ahead, a pale ribbon of moonlight broke through the canopy, illuminating a small clearing, a temporary reprieve. I burst through the tree line, lungs burning, and stumbled into the open. The silence here was eerie, too still. Not even the whisper of wind, just the thudding of my heart and the distant echoing sound of leaves rustling, except it wasn't. The wind, they were fanning out, hunting. I crouched low and listened. There, off to my left, a whisper, a shuffle of feet. To the right, a snarl quickly stifled. They were triangulating me. Lilith had loosed the leash, and her wolves were closing. In I didn't wait. I darted across the clearing and down a slope, sliding more than running, my boots barely catching traction. I hit the bottom and kept going. The terrain dropped again, revealing a narrow stream. Without thinking, I plunged in, the freezing water, rising to my knees, then thighs, soaking through my jeans and numbing my legs. I knew they were tracking me by scent. I needed to mask it. I followed the stream bed, half running, half wading, praying the water would confuse them. The forest thickened again around me, the canopy swallowing the light. Time warped. Seconds felt like hours. I had no idea how far. I'd gone, only that my body was giving out. Then I heard it, not just the rustling or the howls. Voices, human voices. I stopped dead in my tracks, heart leaping. Ahead, dim lights moved between the trees, flashlights. I ducked lower, squinting through the gloom. 3 figures dressed in hunter's camo, locals. One of them was speaking into a walkie-talkie. Relief hit me so fast it made me dizzy. I stumbled forward, waving one hand. "Hey," I croaked. "Over. Here." They turned as one. For a heartbeat I thought I was safe. Then one of them stepped forward and the light hit his face. His eyes glowed. That same internal, unnatural burn I'd seen in the boy at the window. His skin was pale, too pale. His mouth twisted slowly into a grin that stretched unnaturally wide. I froze. These weren't locals. They weren't even pretending anymore. Lilith's. Children had learned mimicry. The nearest one lunged and I barely dodged, his fingers grazing my shoulder. I swung the crowbar upward on reflex, catching him under the chin. The blow lifted him off his feet and into the stream, where he thrashed, once before going still. The others advanced, hissing. I turned and ran again, no longer bothering to stay silent. Every step was fueled by raw adrenaline and the knowledge that I was now deep in their territory, and they were getting smarter. A snarl erupted ahead. I skidded to a stop as Eliza stepped from the brush, her wedding dress shredded, eyes glowing like dying stars. Her mouth opened, and she said my name. Jacob. There was something wrong about the way she said it, like a lover whispering it, from inside a coffin. I raised the crowbar again, but her gaze flicked past me. Too slow, she hissed. Something hit me from behind. I hit the ground hard, the air knocked from my lungs, the crowbar flying from my hand. Hands grabbed me, cold, clawed, inhuman. I thrashed, elbowed backward, connected with a sharp crack. A scream cut the night. I scrambled to my feet and dove for the crowbar. Fingers snatched my ankle. I spun and brought the crowbar down hard, over and over, until the hand let go and the screaming stopped. I was shaking, gasping, and they were still coming. That's when I remembered Vic's words. The valley. He'd said it was 3 miles east. That sunlight hit it first. I didn't know where east was anymore, but I knew I was going downhill, toward lower ground. And the wind had picked up just slightly, but it carried a new scent. Grass, morning, hope. I ran. The vampires followed, but now they were cautious. I'd hurt them. I'd disrupted their nest. They weren't invincible, and they knew it. Ridge loomed ahead, the ground rising before dipping again. I climbed, each step agony, but with every stride I could feel dawn inching closer behind the mountains. The horizon had lightened to a deep steel blue. My watch said 5:03 a.m., less than an hour until sunrise. At the top of the ridge I turned back. The forest below was alive with movement, shadows darting between trees, the gleam of eyes. But none crossed the stream again. None charged into the clearing. They lingered, hesitating, buying time, because she was coming. Lilith didn't hunt. In packs she hunted alone. And when she moved, the others waited. I heard her before I saw her, not footsteps, not speech, just presence, like the sound of silence before a scream, like air thickening before a storm. The trees seemed to part for her, unwilling to stand in her path. And then she was there, at the edge of the clearing, looking up at me. Her face was changed, no longer porcelain and calm. Now it was fury incarnate. Her eyes burned like twin suns. Her hair writhed, lifted by unseen forces, and her mouth split into a snarl that showed too many teeth. "You should have surrendered," she said. "You should have stayed dead," I replied. Then I ran down the ridge and into the valley. Behind me, the final hunt had begun. The valley opened up like a wound in the mountains, broad, shallow, and eerily still beneath the pre-dawn haze. Pines lined the rim like silent sentinels, their tops just beginning to catch the first suggestion of light. It wasn't dawn yet, but it was close, and I wasn't safe. Not even close. My body moved on instinct, stumbling toward the barely visible gravel road snaking along the floor of the valley. I knew what I was looking for, my truck, my last hope. And there it was, just beyond a bend, hunched in the shadows, like a wounded beast. The trailer still attached, the cab dark. No sign of Vic, no sign of the monsters, but they weren't far behind. I could feel them pressing at the edges of the trees, waiting for the signal, waiting for Lilith. I approached the truck, legs trembling. Every joint in my body screamed. My soaked clothes clung to me like skin that wasn't mine. Blood crusted. My palms, my lip was split, and my left ankle throbbed with every step. But I didn't stop. The hood was already up just as I'd left it. Beneath it, the engine waited, sabotaged, wounded, but not dead. Not yet. I dropped to my knees beside the fuel line. The tape was loose. Diesel had continued leaking the entire time I was gone, leaving a glistening trail behind me. If I hadn't run, they could have followed the scent right here. Maybe they already had. I ripped the old tape off, hands shaking, and dug into my emergency kit for more. My fingers found the roll just as a twig snapped somewhere behind me. I froze, slowly turned. Vic stood at the edge of the road, looking like he'd walked straight out of a battlefield. His face was gaunt, hollow, like time had drained him overnight. His sleeve was torn, exposing rows of bite marks, angry and swollen. His eyes met mine with something like guilt, or maybe it was the last shred of humanity trying to crawl out from whatever hole he'd buried it in. "They'll kill you," he said simply. I didn't stop working. "That's the plan. But I'm taking them with me." He walked closer. No threats, no tricks. Just a man too broken to lie anymore. "You think I haven't tried?" he rasped. "You think I didn't fight back when I first made the deal? They always win, Turner. Always." "Then, why are you here?" I asked, yanking the fuel line into place, beginning to wrap the fresh tape. He hesitated. Then quietly, "Because I remember what it was like to have hope." I paused, looked up at him. "Help me." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled something from his pocket and held it out. A Zippo lighter. Its brushed metal surface was etched with initials, L.C. Liar Crane. He pressed it into my palm. "You still have a chance," he said. "I lost mine a long time ago." A howl split the forest behind us. Lilith. She'd found us. Vic turned toward the sound. His face twitched. Fear, pain, maybe even love. "She's coming," he whispered. "You have minutes, if that." I nodded. "There's a valley 3 miles east. You said sunlight hits it first." He gestured down the road. "That way, the last curve before the edge. If you make it there before the engine gives out, you might see the sun." He started to turn away. "Vic," I called. He looked back. "You could still run. Come with me." He shook his head, a sad smile tugging at his lips. "I sold my soul, Turner. All I have left is time to buy you some." Then he walked into the woods. I didn't see him again. I slammed the hood shut and dove into the cab, jamming the key into the ignition. The truck groaned, caught, sputtered, then roared to life. A fresh burst of diesel smoke filled the cab, acrid and sharp, but I didn't care. I drove. The tires screamed against the gravel, the trailer lurching behind me like a drunk, but I didn't slow down. The road curved left, then right, a winding path that felt like it would never end. Behind me, I saw them in the mirrors, figures spilling out of the trees, sprinting, leaping, gliding. Eliza in her tattered dress, Jason in his Letterman jacket, and behind them all Lilith, gliding like a queen of shadows, her hair alive with fury, her eyes glowing with the light of every life she'd consumed. I pushed the truck harder. 40, 50, 60. The road climbed. The eastern horizon glimmered. Faintly, just a hint, a whisper of gold beyond the black. Then the engine coughed. "No," I hissed. "Not now, just a little more." The speed dropped. 50, 40. The fuel leak was worse than I thought. I could feel the trailer fighting me, its weight a parasite sucking the last breath from the truck's lungs. 30, then 20, and then the truck gave out. One last sputter. One final wheeze. Then silence. We rolled forward on momentum alone. The hill crested, the trees parted, and the valley opened wide. It was bathed in the first true light of dawn, soft, golden, sacred. A miracle. I slammed the brakes. The truck skidded to a halt just feet from the edge. I opened the door and climbed out slowly, every muscle in my body screaming. Then I turned, and they were there. Dozens of them, all lined along the ridge. Some crouched, some standing, some crawling on the trailer like animals. Their faces were still, waiting. Then Lilith stepped forward. Her body was burnt, blistered from the fight. Her once perfect face now half ruined by fury and smoke, but her eyes were alive with hatred. "Nowhere left to run, Mr. Turner," she called. I pulled out the Zippo. She saw it and laughed. "We aren't afraid of fire." I struck it open. A small flickering flame danced in the early morning light. "Not the fire," I said. I pointed behind her, to the ruptured trailer leaking diesel, to the trail of fuel that had followed me here. Then I threw the lighter and watched the world ignite. The explosion hit like a divine verdict, fire rolling up the length of the trailer, engulfing the coffins, the soil, the creatures. Lilith screamed, a sound that shattered the morning stillness. Others caught fire and scattered, limbs thrashing, bodies convulsing in unnatural agony. I turned away and ran for the sunlight. Behind me, they burned, and ahead, the sun was rising. The sun was crawling up the horizon, slow but relentless, casting long amber beams through the valley like divine fingers peeling away the night. But dawn wasn't salvation yet. It was a race, and I was still in it. I stumbled down the slope toward the truck's front bumper, my legs stiff with exhaustion, smoke curling behind me in thick, choking columns from the inferno I'd left in my wake. I didn't dare look back. I didn't want to see who had survived, but I could hear them. Amid the crackle of burning wood and metal, there were inhuman shrieks, piercing and maddened. They weren't dead, not all of them. I'd wounded them, broken their sanctuary. But creatures like Lilith didn't die easily. They endured, they hunted, they remembered. I hit the ground running again, pushing through every muscle's protest, every cracked rib's groan, every raw burn on my skin. The air was lighter in the valley, the mist rising away into heaven like ghosts giving up. My chest ached with every breath, but it was clean air, real air, the kind that didn't carry whispers or the scent of rotting soil. My boots found asphalt again, the road winding east still cracked but intact. The sun caught on the treetops, and I felt the warmth on my neck like a hand I hadn't felt in years. It almost dropped me to my knees. I'd forgotten what real warmth was. Not just heat, but hope. Then, behind me, gravel crunched. I didn't stop. I didn't need to turn to know who it was. Lilith. She was close now, too close. I could feel her fury radiating through the air like static before lightning. I didn't know how many of her children had survived the explosion, but it didn't matter. She was the engine behind them all, the center of their hunger, the reason they existed, and she wasn't going to let me go, not after everything. "Jacob," she hissed. Her voice wasn't human anymore. It had splinters of 1,000 lives in it. Pain, seduction, fury, loss, all tangled in that one broken syllable. It made my ears ring and my vision blur. I kept running. Ahead, the curve of the road arched up into the last ridge. I remembered what Vic said. Just over the hill, the sun hits first. If I could get past it, get into the open stretch, I might make it. She wouldn't follow in direct sunlight, but I heard her footsteps now. Not fast, not desperate. She didn't need to. She knew my body was failing. She could take her time. "You'll never save her," she growled closer. "She's already ours." I gritted my teeth, shoving one foot in front of the other. "You lied. We offered you everything," she snapped. "You threw it away for what? One sunrise? One act of defiance?" "No," I rasped. "For freedom." A scream tore through the trees, inhuman and furious. She was done talking. I reached the final incline. My feet slipped once, twice. I went down to one knee, caught myself on my raw palm, and kept going. My eyes stung from sweat and smoke. My throat was raw. I didn't know if I was crying or bleeding. Maybe both. The road curved. Light spilled across the pavement in a sudden beam, so bright it felt unreal. The ridge broke. The sun hit me full in the face. I staggered forward and collapsed against the warm asphalt, gasping. The heat poured over. My back, my arms, my eyelids. It was pure, undeniable. The light of a world that didn't need monsters to explain itself. I rolled over and looked behind me. Lilith stood at the edge of shadow, her body blackened and cracked, her skin blistered and peeling from the explosion. But she still moved with that terrible grace. Her eyes met mine across the sunlit divide. She couldn't cross, but she wouldn't leave. "You can't kill hunger," she said. Her voice was quieter now, but it carried. "You can't bury what the earth remembers." I sat up slowly, wincing. "No," I said, "but I can starve you." Her face twisted. It was still beautiful, but in the way a vulture is beautiful. In the sky, elegant, deadly, grotesque in context. "You think she's safe now?" she whispered. "You think your sister will live without cost?" I hesitated. Then, "She'll live on her terms. Not yours." She bared her teeth in a final snarl, but didn't move. The sunlight began to reach her feet, and she stepped backward, into the fog like a nightmare returning to sleep. No screams, no threats, just the slow dissolve of something that could not exist in the day. And then she was gone. I lay there for a long time, letting the sun burn away the cold in my bones, letting the earth feel real again. My hands were blistered, my legs numb, but I was alive, and I had one job left. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, 1 bar, then 2, then a signal. My thumb trembled as I unlocked it and called Emily. It rang once, twice, then her voice, small, weak, but there. "Jake," she whispered. I closed my eyes and everything hit me at once, the road, the fire, the ledger, the lies, but I smiled anyway. "Hey, Em," I whispered. "I think we're going to be okay." "Are you crying?" she asked, voice soft with concern. "Just smoke," I said. "Where are you?" "Coming home," and I meant it. I rose to my feet and looked around one last time. The road ahead curved into sunlight, into possibility. Behind me, the forest still loomed, but it had lost something. Power, presence. The creatures that haunted it had been wounded, maybe even broken. For now. But I knew better than to believe in permanent victories. Some roads, once driven, leave a mark. Some debts take more than blood to settle, and some things, once awakened, don't go back to sleep. But morning had come. The final drive was over, and I was still behind the wheel. The sun rose in full, casting golden fire across the valley floor. It bled into the trees, kissed the blacktop with molten warmth, and climbed the sky as though trying to chase the last shadows from the earth. I stood at the edge of it all, bathed in the first true light I'd felt in what seemed like an eternity, and watched the world reclaim itself. The forest, once thick with whispering voices and unnatural stillness, now stood hushed in a different way, like it was holding its breath, not in fear but in reverence. The mist that had choked the trees began to rise in curling tendrils, lifting skyward and unraveling like the remnants of a bad dream. There were no more voices in the vents, no tapping at the glass. The air felt lighter, thinner, real. Behind me, smoke still billowed from the wreckage. The truck had burned almost completely, reduced to a smoldering skeleton of twisted metal and scorched rubber. The trailer had ruptured in the blast, its frame crumpled, panels peeled away like the skin of a burst fruit. The coffins inside, or what was left of them, lay splintered and blackened. Most were nothing more than charred boards now, their contents turned to ash. The soil, once living and writhing with something ancient, had been scattered in the explosion. What little remained was inert, dull clumps of dark dirt that no longer pulsed with vitality or hunger. Without it, they were nothing. No sanctuary, no rebirth. Lilith and her brood had needed that soil, needed it the way lungs need air. And now it was gone. I picked my way back toward the wreckage, boots crunching over bits of glass and melted plastic. My legs still ached. Every step felt like dragging a corpse made of fire. But I needed to see. I needed to know. I passed a burned skeleton twisted in the front seat. It wasn't mine. The truck had been empty when I lit the flame, but this body had been there after. Likely one of them, trying to regain control, trying to deliver the payload the only way they knew how. The sun had caught them mid-motion. Further, back near the trailer, I saw more, blackened husks in vaguely human shapes, their mouths locked in eternal screams, their claws fused to their sides by fire. Their elegance was gone. No more velvet steps or gliding grace. They were corpses now, and they would stay that way. Unless... No. I wouldn't let my mind go there. Not yet. Something caught my eye near the edge of the debris. A half-melted brass. Plaque, its surface blistered, but the engraving still legible. Eliza Thorne, 1897. 1923. I picked it up carefully, brushing ash from its edges. Her name had been the first I'd read, the first coffin I'd seen. She had followed me across mountains and woods like a vengeful wraith in silk and teeth. And now, she was gone. The plaque felt heavier than it should have, as if it carried the weight of everyone they'd ever taken. I tucked it into my pocket, I don't know why. Maybe to remember. Maybe because someone should. Beside the ruined coffins lay the ledger. Amazingly, it had survived. The cover was scorched, the leather burned and brittle, but the pages inside had been shielded, tucked beneath steel or luck. I opened it carefully, fingers black with soot, and flipped to the last page. My name was still there. Jacob Turner, 2023. Emily's too, but hers had been crossed out, a single red line drawn clean through the letters, as if reality itself had redacted their claim. I didn't know what it meant. Maybe they were bound by their own records. Maybe when the sanctuary was destroyed, the contract ended. Or maybe something had given her back. I closed the book and tossed it into the flames, still licking at the edge of the trailer. Let the past burn. Let the history be ash. Some names shouldn't be remembered. I stood a long while after that, just watching, not thinking, just feeling the sun on my skin and the soft, barely there breeze tugging at my hair. It wasn't over. Not really, I knew that. There were still shadows in the world, still things that slithered between cracks in reality and fed on the desperate. But for now the hollow was quiet, and I had survived it. Eventually, the distant sound of sirens floated in on the breeze. Local authorities, no doubt drawn by the explosion. I didn't panic. I knew what I would say. I'd rehearsed it in my head during those final miles. A trucker lost control. Brake failure. Trailer combusted. No idea what was inside. Nothing illegal, of course, nothing supernatural. They wouldn't believe the truth. And even if they did, they couldn't do anything about it. This wasn't their war. It wasn't even mine. Not really. I was just the latest man in a long line of the damned who'd decided to say no. But the difference, I had lived. And Emily would too. I pulled out my phone, fingers still smudged with ash, and tapped her contact again. This time she answered on the first ring. Jake. Her voice was stronger. Not full, but better, brighter. I'm okay, I said. You okay? They said I might get to go home next week. The doctors can't explain it, but things are improving. The scans, they look different. I closed my eyes and let that hit me. Not with joy, not with relief, but with gravity. Because I knew what it meant. Some part of the deal had lingered. Maybe the damage had been undone just enough to make this redemption possible. Or maybe the fire had broken their hold. I didn't know, I didn't care. All I knew was my sister was getting better and I wasn't in chains. That's amazing, I said, forcing the words through a dry throat. You sound tired. I'm on the road, I told her, but I'll see you soon. Promise? I looked back at the valley one last time, now soaked in golden light. Every trace of evil burned to dust. I promise. And then I started walking, not running, not hiding, just moving forward, one foot after the other, through the sunlight. Through the ashes. Weeks later, the nightmares still come. I wake in a cold sweat, heart racing, convinced I hear tapping at the window or voices whispering from the vents. Some nights, I smell the soil, that same wet, ancient rot, and I bolt. Upright, expecting to see Eliza standing at the foot of my bed, her eyes glowing with unspoken promises. But there's nothing. Just darkness, just silence. Emily is recovering. The doctors call it a miracle. Her scans are clean. The tumors are gone. She's walking again, smiling again. Every time I visit her, I look for something in her eyes, some trace of them. But there's nothing. No hunger, no shadow, just my sister, whole, alive. Still, I can't shake the feeling that I broke something bigger than a contract that night. That burning the trailer, the coffins, the ledger. It didn't end things. It woke something, or maybe it freed it. A few days ago, a package arrived at my door. No return address. Inside was a book, the ledger untouched, unburned, and a note tucked inside. One name left to cross out, mine. I buried it in the deepest hole I could dig. But I don't know if that matters, because some nights when the world is just quiet enough I hear her again, Lilith, whispering from the edges of sleep, reminding me that hunger never dies, that all roads lead back to Blood Hollow. So I keep the crowbar by the bed. I check the locks twice, and I never ever forget the rules, because I know they're still out there waiting for someone desperate enough to say yes, waiting for the next name to be written, and praying that it won't be yours. Thank you for venturing into the darkness with us. If these stories sent chills down your spine, don't keep the fear to yourself. Leave a comment, smash that like button, and share this video with someone who dares to listen in the dark. We release terrifying true stories every week, so be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss what's lurking in the shadows. This is High Scare Stories, where nightmares don't end when the video does. Until next time, stay safe and stay scared.